It feels very much like there is a counter narrative, and I'm a voice against that. And that counter narrative is that life with this disease is not worth living. It is to have people commit suicide. People say, well, I should be able to choose when and how I die. I would say people who are given a terminal diagnosis for a disease that's terminal aren't competent to make an informed decision. That's just my view. So I'm a voice against that. I mean, it's one of the triggers. There is a book out there, I'm not going to give the name, by a woman who claims it was a bestseller, but she tells the story of how her husband had been diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's. That's my diagnosis. And how hard it was for them to get to Switzerland to do a company suicide. As a result of listening to it, I was on the elliptical machine at my exercise place, and I said, just for this briefest second, should I do that? And all of a sudden I realized, should I commit suicide? And it pissed me off so much that I wanted to be a counter voice to that life can be worth living with the diagnosis and the disease.
Sam, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So we start every episode with a Patreon question where members of the village are able to ask the guest a question. So I have a question from them for you.
I'm ready.
How did you find the public's dementia stigma impacted the development and rolling out of your show?
Well, I think by that time, people were interested in it. In fact, it may have triggered a somewhat interested because the stigma of he can't really have it or that. So it was the show is theater and somebody sponsoring it. Now, this is a little different. I've written a different play and I used to self-produce it and that I'd be the one. That might have been the question is, a little bit more curious if I were doing this. What are they doing? Is this a crazy man going on? So I would have credible institutions, a theater, a senior living organization, even the county government, I was keynote speaker in quotes with a performance of the show at the National Association of Adult Daycares in Atlanta, so that the sponsoring entity largely avoids that approach to it. And part of the meaning of the show is to challenge the stigma. And so I think that it had some curiosity. I don't think, though I haven't run too often into, well, so-and-so didn't. I think I've occasionally run into where somebody says, my spouse didn't come because they think it's too hard. They do want to hear about this. So that the stigma may have kept a few people away, but not many. So I've been fortunate in having people presenting me that could help develop the audience, and it didn't affect that part of my life and my work. Now, we could talk about at some point on a day-to-day basis, people don't know, and I'll let people know that I have Alzheimer's. The reactions I get are, "Oh my God, that's so terrible." Now I think the question to give them it's not about how it affects my play. It's how does it affect us in the day-to-day life? I think that is a bigger question because, well, I say bigger question. I think a lot of people don't want to be around those with cognitive disorders. They're afraid of the idea that I might be misbehave or not be able to speak properly.
Do you think the people that attended your show were ones that already had some interest or confusion or wanting to learn more about dementia? Or do you think it was just a larger people that were just unaware of what the show was and they just thought it sounded interesting?
Oh, I think the impetus are people whose lives have in some way been touched by somebody with a cognitive disorder, also known as dementia. Actually, the medical word for it, by the way, in the medical books is neurocognitive disorder, major or minor. but I call it a cognitive disorder. If you lived in a home where an elder was who had already been cognitively disabled or declined, you would be interested in this. What I hear, which I did not expect early on, I don't hear it as often, which I'm trying to understand why. But almost for the first 10 shows, somebody would walk up and say, "Oh, my mother had this disorder," or "my aunt," or "my grandfather." And I always wondered what was going on their head. Thank you for letting me get a glimpse. Of course, I don't know what was going on in somebody else's head, but my story helped them imagine what may have been happening inside their head as I tell what happened inside my head. And I think there's a gift in this show in that way. But that is how that idea of uh, who react and who come, I think people, enormous number of people have experienced it in their families, in their lives, and increasing numbers are experiencing it because of the aging of the population. And the not highly recognized fact, 2026 is the first year that a member of the baby boom generation turned 80. And of course, that's the 2026 is 1946 was the first year of the baby boomer. So 2026, that's 80 years ago. And so people are seeing it in their lives. And unfortunately, the word dementia, I mean, who knew when I was diagnosed, they said it could be 5 to 10 years before it gets a lot worse. You hear the word dementia and you think the end stage. Behind me, people are watching. There's a um, picture. It was donated to me. It was given to me by someone who saw my show. Actually, almost 3 months after they saw the show, the wife of that gentleman, the gentleman who drew it, but it's a self-portrait. They had seen my show. He had passed away the week before, and it's like, why is she in touch with me a week after husband's passed? She said, he drew that. It's a self-portrait of memory loss. And it is a picture of both the pain but isn't the power of art too to express things so impressive? Um, and I think we are at a time and an era where people don't. It's the word itself evokes fear, and I don't want to know, and people try to stay away from it, and it's going to become, and it's already becoming a huge factor in our social networks, in communities, and in families.
Hmm. Well, Sam, I want to introduce you to the audience right now because you've already alluded to some of the really interesting pieces of your story. But let me explain to them now and then we'll get into it. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. So Sam describes his theater work as his fourth age. He comes to it after a career as a prominent member of America's consumer movement. Trained as a lawyer, he started his career at Ralph Nader's first advocacy group in Washington, D.C. in 1970. He then started a public affairs firm. And over his career, Sam was a regular in the national news and talk shows such as Face the Nation, The Today Show, Good Morning America, NBC Nightly News, Phil Donahue, and The Oprah Winfrey Show. Sam started performing in community theater and in 2000 started to train improv with Artistic New Directions as a student of Gary Austin, Jeffrey Sweet, and Carol Fox Prescott. He has appeared as part of the Gary Austin Workshop in New York and Washington, D.C. Dementia Man is his second play. His first play, The Actual Dance, Love's Ultimate Journey Through Breast Cancer, debuted in 2013, and it was adapted into a book by the same name in 2021. Sam is the author of several books and articles, including Choosing the Public Interest, Essays for the First Purg, and Reverse the Charges, How to Save Money on Your Phone Bill. Sam has been named to the Who's Who in America in 2020 2023, and 2024. That's impressive, Sam. That's impressive. So, can you talk to us a little bit about your early life? Um, what was your experience like growing up? Did you have any experience towards Alzheimer's or dementia in your life?
Not that I understood it that way. Um, I grew up in El Paso, Texas, the only boy with four sisters. And and in the play and in my life, I call myself a troublemaker. Um, I always been there. I almost think there's a gene in some of us that I get so riled up over what I perceived injustice that I just have to do something about it. And even as a um, 17-year-old, I guess I thought it was 14, but I've been corrected. Um, the city council in El Paso put in an 11 p.m. curfew. I didn't like it. I went down and did my research, and Nelson Rockefeller said they were unconstitutional, and I lectured the city council. And it got headlines, and I was headlines in the El Paso Herald Post, and when I was 17 years old for taking on the city council, and it became my whole life. But my family itself, my mother, it was funny. It just how dare you? This is terrible. And then one day, one of her friends said it was they were proud of it and changed their mind. Um, they were shy. My parents were come from a family that were working class. I'd say lower middle, more houses, lower upper middle class in El Paso. Very large family. Um, there's nobody that I recognize as having dementia. We had older relatives. So my grandmother on my father's side lived with us a little bit. She seemed to be my memories of her were really just in the wheelchair, sort of out of it, but it wasn't overt disorder, you know. And obviously, I do have a genetic risk for Alzheimer's. It took me, we were talking about how I realized that. And that came from my grandmother, my father's mother, and that side of the family, but I never saw it. I never noticed it. So it really wasn't, I was, the only boy, four sisters, three of them older than me. So yeah, I grew up more around trying to be the guy and making a name for myself as a guy. And yeah, I got in a lot of trouble too. I'd steal the car at night when I was getting to be 13 and 14. And my parents at one time thought or my dad was sure I was going to be a juvenile delinquent. Um, but I don't know what I wonder is where I found the impulse to correct social and wrongs, because it feels so genetic for me. I was doing it, as I said, the kid who thought of it. Why did I care that the city council had a curfew? Well, they were enforcing it where the Mexican Americans and the poor people had, not in the upper middle class or the lower middle class neighborhoods where I lived. And I thought that was wrong. I don't know why. I didn't teach it. I didn't. My dad was a traveling salesman. In the play it says, think Willie Loman. I don't know if people remember Death of a Salesman. The head of that story is Willie Loman, who committed suicide when his business was closed and taken away from him. My dad worked as a traveling salesman. That meant every 3 out of 4 weeks he was out of town in a car driving the desert Southwest. He shows up and he made commissions. He was a commission guy. And he did well. He could sell. I learned from him the best way to be a good salesman is make your customers your friends. That's a different conversation. Um, but one day he goes to work. The company had been sold, and the new owners say, "Well, we paid too much. We can't afford to keep you. You're fired today. Go home. No pension, no Social Security, no health care." And it broke him. And I don't know whether that was my source of anger or I don't know where it came from. Um, but I've grown up. I still think I have it, and the play is a version of a call for being able to fixing the broken system and also to enable people like me to live a meaningful life. Again, the word dementia itself evokes the picture,
Hmm.
right? It evokes that. But my doctor said 5 to 10 years before it could get worse. There are millions of us out there with early stages, desperate to be fully helped in it and brought into community. So I grew up, I don't know, I grew up being that voice. I was in the student senate in college, uh, in in undergraduate school, went to law school, and didn't cause. Well, no, yeah, I did cause trouble in law school. Okay, Kent State. Do you remember Kent State?
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
Kent State is what happened, an anti-war demonstration where some students were shot and killed. And it was, I graduated from law school in 1970. This had happened in the early spring of 1970. I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm a senior in law school, and there's going to be a demonstration against the war, and the city council refused to issue a parade permit
This would have been Vietnam. Would it have been?
in Vietnam. And they evoked the fear that you're going to have the police come in and students would be shot. I and a group of other law students stayed up all night, created a petition to go to court to require, called a mandamus, to force the city council to issue the parade permit. We had a faculty member help us. And it was issued. And I can remember early morning, I'm walking home. The sidewalks had been filled with people because they couldn't go out on the streets. And they got news of the order and they broke out into the streets. And it was a peaceful demonstration. And I don't know. So it's what I think everybody to some degree will find that they can find that they have a genetic purpose. I've never used it. This is a first, a genetic purpose in life, something built into their genes that and I somehow fighting for justice was part of who I was.
You mentioned earlier on that you were essentially lobbying city council for this curfew to not happen because it was inequitable for all individuals. But then I would argue that your show now is trying to do a similar purpose. It is advocating by bringing awareness of dementia. Do you think that that's kind of been a common trend across your early life legal profession and now?
Yeah, I think a variation on that. Yeah, consumer protection, working. Some people, I'm shocked, don't know who Ralph Nader was, and he is. Ralph is alive, and he has if you want to Google the name, he has a podcast, not in competition with this, every Friday afternoon. Ralph, it's called the Ralph Nader Hour. He even had me on and talked about my book here, Dementia Man. But it feels very much like that's, in this context, there is a counter narrative, and I'm a voice against that. And that counter narrative is that life with this disease is not worth living, and and it is to have people commit suicide. There is a accompanied suicide movement that, and I'll give you the counter argument. People say, well, I should be able to choose when and how I die. But dying because of hopelessness or because you can't afford your medical care, and I would want somebody, I would say people who are given a terminal diagnosis for a disease that's terminal aren't competent to make an informed decision. That's just my view. And so I'm a voice against that. I mean, it's one of the triggers. There is a book out there, I'm not going to give the name, by a woman and she claims it was a bestseller. I didn't see it, but she tells the story of how her husband had been diagnosed with early stage Alzheimer's. That's my diagnosis. And how hard it was for them to get to Switzerland to do a company suicide. And as a result of listening to it, I was on the elliptical machine at my exercise place, and I said, and I just for this briefest second said, should I do that? And all of a sudden I realized, should I commit suicide? And it pissed me off. I hope that's okay. So much that I wanted to be a counter voice to that life can be worth living with the diagnosis and the disease. And I do wonder who I will become. I'm not afraid of it. And that's what triggered me to start writing the play. And so it was the same thing. I got angry at what I perceived as an injustice. It triggered that gene in me to say, that is wrong. And it becomes an encouragement even to do it. And, look at me. I'm 3 years into this, 2022, 4 years into this diagnosis. And it's actually, even longer. I was diagnosed first with mild cognitive impairment. And I'm living my life, and I'm having meaning and purpose, and I hope help, even though, yes, it is having a financial impact. We are having to downsize. I'm now, I was on the medicine. There are some new medicines out there. And one of the risks, get into the medicine of it real quickly, but I have a genetic risk, which I didn't know about because I didn't see people growing up with the disease, called APOE4. And there's a risk on some of the new medicines of brain bleeds. Well, I started one of the new medicines, and lo and behold, I found out I had 3 MRIs, and each show a few more micro brain bleeds. I'm having to stop the medicine. I'm having some terrible difficulty sleeping. So it doesn't look like it, but I have been affected. My health has taken a dip.
So, Sam, what impact do these microbleeds have? You said they're making it hard to sleep. What other symptoms or
I'm
feelings
having
are
more
causing?
difficulty in word finding.
Mm.
I like it because it's both funny and sad. I'm in my room here, and on my upper right hand here, there's a woman in this room called Alexa, and I wanted to call her name, and I couldn't find the word. So I say to my wife, Susan, come in here. I need your help. Uh, can you tell me who this woman is? And she gave me the word, Alexa. But it is a phenomenon. It's hard to explain. I'm aware it has a name. I know it's a female name. And in these moments, I can't find it. Now, it doesn't happen. It's different every time. And so who knew there's something called neurocognitive speech therapy. I've never heard of it before, but I'm now in that, just started. And then I realized, well, people have strokes, other brain, falls, and often have trouble. And sometimes practice can help. There are strategies. This is not, here's one of my strategies. I couldn't think of it. I had to pay, the Medicare is paying for somebody and it's ongoing, but I have a book. And before I go someplace, I write down the names of the people I'm going to see and the things I'm going to do so that I can, first of all, just doing that helps me remember when I get there. And then I could, if need be, open it up and look and get a little help. And I didn't have to do that before. That's new. And so, yeah.
That's a very positive and proactive approach. We've heard a similar thing before. We had a guy on the show, one of the first episodes actually. His name is Jim Mann. He's been living with Alzheimer's for 18 years in west coast of Canada, and in the time he's published something like 56 academic articles, and he's done all these kind of things. And when he travels to the grocery store, he still takes the bus by himself, but sometimes he always keeps a notepad in his hand with exactly what he said, what I need to do, where I'm going, and he has a little lanyard on that says something effective. I have Alzheimer's, and there you go. Exactly. What something just like that to start the conversation. I think it's such a great approach that yourself and Jim are saying of, let's just keep doing these things and set ourselves up proactively for success. Like that is amazing.
Yeah, well, I don't know if Canada is better. A lot of places in Europe are far better than the United States. Um, every airport now has these in Canada, has a desk with it above. So I'm an advocate in the United States that anywhere in the U.S. that has to comply with our Americans with Disability Act be required to have a desk, or it could be just like I go in the grocery store, there's an information little desk right off to the side. Put some of these up there and train the person how to deal and talk with. Also have a checkout line that has this on top of it. So everybody doesn't have to wait behind me while I figure it out. I can go alone, but even now, people will hear me and say, "Oh, you don't have it." I guarantee you I have it. I can get lost in the store for moments. I can get confused. I can forget what I came for. Um, and yet I could still get there by myself. I could still try to be independent for a while, and for a while longer, much longer than just as a gentleman you described. Could be independent for a lot longer than just throw me into a senior living or memory center and um, close the door and turn on the TV. Uh, that's a whole other issue. There is a movement in senior living in the United States to apply the Montessori technique to memory care. That is, finding what a person did, even if they don't seem to be, even if they seem to be entirely different, uh, which I will be one day. Um, that what do they do in living? So, say he was a plumber. Well, in memory care, give him some things to be the one they call to help fix things, or to know how to just turn the water on someplace so that it, and so again, the word dementia so stigmatizes everything.
100%. 100%. It's a nasty word. A lot of people don't want to use it, and they create a stigma associated with it. When in reality, it's very prevalent, and like you're showing, and a lot of other people I've met are showing that just because you have a diagnosis doesn't really change who you are, and dignity should remain regardless.
Yes, and the medical world in the U.S., I assume globally, but I don't know that, has changed the neurologic book, the neurology book, the DSM-5 is what it's called, where they did give you the codes and the names of diseases. They now call it neurocognitive disorder, major or minor. They don't. The medical world does not, in their literature, refer to dementia, and yet it is still an everyday term in many places, even medical.
It's a
Um,
common use colloquium, right?
yeah.
That's the thing that everyone uses, but very few people outside the space really know what it means, right?
Well, I challenge you. What does it mean? Because it is an adjective to describe how a person behaves and looks, not what causes it, and not whether it's how far along or anything else. It's sort of like that picture behind me. That's dementia. What? Because it's people who look and behave that way. It's not, well, what caused that person's cognitive disorder? And it was the frontal lobe. Was it Alzheimer's? Was it a fall? Those cause cognitive disorders, and so my word finding is form of aphasia. Difficulty finding words and expressing them, even though I can see the word in my head. Imagine, but anyway, so there are, hopefully there are more and more changes coming around and a higher recognition. And my goal is to be part of that movement to help that happen.
What were you experiencing early on? Because you said 4 years ago, roughly, you were diagnosed. So what were you experiencing before your diagnosis?
Well, there was one. First of all, I may have had, because of the genetic risk, eh, symptoms of way before we thought it out. Real quick, I remember in the probably about 2009 having a physical, just an annual physical, and saying my very long time doctor. He had been my internist forever, and I do this because I remember I was buttoning up my shirt and I said, doctor, you know, I'm wondering if there's something wrong with my memory. I think I'm becoming forgetful. I said, Sam, there's nothing wrong with your memory. I know you. Now, if you couldn't remember what you had for breakfast, then I'd worry about you. And I go, breakfast? What the hell did I have for breakfast? I had no idea. But I was younger, and I was running a business, and he sent me to a psychologist who prescribed an anti-anxiety drug. Because, the funny thing, I had been the CEO of a small business, and I was in the group of small business CEOs where we, support our own business group. I found out half of them were taking Wellbutrin, the same drug I had been prescribed. So I just assumed, all right, you get anxious as the boss, and this is the make the boss happy drug. I wonder now whether, had it been taken more seriously, that we would have discovered early on. Would that have helped? I don't know. So it was really only after the symptoms of driving on the wrong side of the road, not, uh, um, disappearing. The biggest symptom was disappearing. I don't remember when I mentioned this before, but we're calling it dis. I would be sitting at the desk, working on something. I used to read a lot, used to type a lot, and I would forget the word, couldn't remember it. And I would, or the idea, the word, the articulation, and I would all of a sudden close my eyes, but I would disappear. I would leave the moment. What does that mean? I experienced myself floating in outer space. I do this because I had the feeling I was spinning through, looking for the word, and no, that's a dark hole. No, it's right on the other side, and then back awake. I suspect it was in real time, maybe even a second or less. In my head time, it was like forever. I came to define it in the play the nothingness place. It was literally disappearing from reality for just a moment, trying to find and I was in a medical appointment where I was getting a second opinion, and they describing to the neurologist, and he had a neurologic intern in the room, and a younger woman and a nurse, and I was telling him about the nothingness place, and the intern said, "Was it an hallucination or was that real?" And of course, my immediate reaction, it was real. Of course, it was real because oh no, there was no outer space. It was an hallucination, but it was so real to me that in that moment, I called it real. I corrected myself. And it was, I know everybody's symptom is different. I haven't heard anybody else who experienced just that. But that's what scared me more than anything else. And it was hard to persuade my doctors that, it's only when I told them about that experience that they would, my internist, again, his response when I complained about my memory to him, he says, "Oh, Sam, I guess I was in my mid to late 70s. Oh, you're an overeducated man, overreacting to normal aging." But then I tell him about this weird experience of and that's when he sends me to a neurologist. Uh, and so much of that goes on, no, just normal aging. I took, there are medical tests, the neuropsychological exam. It's a 5-hour exam where they compare people through cognitive testing um, to everybody, age, education, ethnicity. They have this test that they've given enough to people of all, from genders to education to where you're born, the whole thing. And it showed me that I was cognitively below the mean or the average, and that's mild cognitively impaired. And he was taking that test that showed, yes, there was something wrong. That was different. What it was then took finding out that I'm amyloid positive, which is Alzheimer's disease. Not why. That test doesn't tell you why you're different, only that you are different and less cognitively aware or cognitively competent.
You were mentioning earlier on that you're experiencing a form of aphasia, the lack of ability necessarily to pick the right word, find the right word. Um, how did that impact you, considering you are a lawyer, you are, well trained in words, reading, writing, being able to pick the right word for the right situation, and you're very specific being a lawyer in the word you use. So how did that part of your journey impact you?
That didn't start, actually, I've been talking just now, and this is actually quite recently. It wasn't my major sister. It's only since I've had since the first of the year, this year, that I had this reaction to the new medicine that I was on. That wasn't the bigger symptoms was getting lost. When the poor, just what was it that felt me? Not remembering what I had for breakfast. Not without GPS, I could get lost going around the corner. Um, Never had that problem before, but all of a sudden, and the GPS is. I wonder sometimes whether GPS hid the severity of the problem. Um, by the way, I was, well, I've written many books now, and I even wrote, Dementia Man. You can see it behind me, and my other play, The Actual Dance, and there's a little book behind it. It's called Choosing the Public Interest. But I've had help now. There are book coaches, and they're not ghostwriters. They help write it. Um, I can't do it now. I don't read now. I don't have the retention. I won't remember what I read last week. When if I get a book down and you put it down for the next day, which I don't remember what I read in the prior day. So the the symptoms were slower to evolve, and over time,
How did your family and community react to your diagnosis?
we're by and large very, very well up to a point. Okay, family, great. So we have two children. Uh, one's a lawyer, the other's a doctor.
Wow.
Which one is which? Who's the doctor?
I would say the oldest is the doctor and the second child is the lawyer.
Who's the gender? What's the gender?
Oh, the I'd say the female is a doctor and the lawyer is a male.
So the funny thing, when I do this in my play, almost everybody talks about my son, the doctor, and it's not. She's a pediatric dentist, which is a doctor.
Mhm.
Uh, and my son is the lawyer. He is the oldest. He's a member of the state legislature in Virginia. He's a politician. We're very blessed. Our kids have done very well, and we have we are, we can take all the credit we want, and on the other hand, we are blessed that we have no family disorder or dysfunction. We each come from families where everybody was loving and supportive. And uh, I'm from El Paso, Texas. My wife was from Houston, Texas. First time we noticed each other at a youth group convention, we started making eyes at each other. So we were meant to be. Um, And our children and grandchildren are doing really well. Our oldest granddaughter, 22, and we were married at 21, by the way, but our oldest grandchild's 22 and just got her master's degree from the University of Delaware here. And everybody is doing really, really well. And we are so, we love to take credit for it, but, everybody, our son, God bless him, went through, uh, and luckily his son, been a tough guy too. Uh, he had to find himself. He was a guy who, the borrowed car of our niece, did a 360. Luckily, that for people side top side again, back up. But he wasn't injured, but they made him stay in the hospital overnight. Okay. And his dad says, I hope you make him use a bedpan. Anyway, uh, but they've all worked out. Life is full of, all sorts of uncertainties and things, and you can't be, you try to do your best. We've been just so lucky that it's all been good, and they want to be as helpful as possible. And it is a process. You can't assume anything. So our daughter in particular calls her mother, my wife, often to keep in touch and what do we need. And the fact that she is a medical professional, a dentist, but she knows the medical jargon. We can often double check with her. And her son, a lawyer and a state representative. Well, we're having to sell our houses. He's in the real estate law business. He's taking charge of that and making sure everything is done well. And they were with us when we saw an estate lawyer, which one of the things, you want to talk about what the journey is, it's get me off the titles and get me off the accounts, because who knows when I might do something totally irrational. And that's important. I mean, we've made some concessions. I can get access to some, but the big money is away from me. Family money, retirement, which makes sense.
How does that make you feel, Sam, to know that you've worked years to have these things, this money, these houses, and now you don't really have access to it out of a protectionist strategy?
I'm perfectly happy with it. I'm glad. I don't want to do something really stupid. I don't want, and I don't. It's interesting. I everybody's going to be different. I'm trying not to be judgmental. There are people, our friends, when he got sick, the first thing they did, well, when he's really sick, took a trip around the world. There are a lot of people. I want to see everything. My last part of my life. Let's go do all the things we said. We don't have a bucket list, and we were confronted this when Susan was sick. So this was 20 years ago. But when your wife gets sick, and they said, and everybody thought she was going to die, it was, and I even said to Susan, because I was working, I was president of my public affairs company, and I said to Susan, I can quit or I can take a leave of absence. Let's go take a trip around the world. Let's go do it. She said, Sam, if we're not doing what we want to do now, what we love doing, let's change because we don't like what we're doing, not because I might die. What a piece of wisdom. What a piece. If we're not happy we're not doing what we want most in life, change to what we want to do. Now, I get it that there are real world constraints on some of that. In Canada, less so than the United States, but if you don't have guaranteed retirement, if you don't have guaranteed housing stuff, many people work at a job not because they love the job they're doing, but because they need a health care. Isn't that a sad statement? Isn't that you spend much of your life doing a task and a job because you need the healthcare insurance, not because what your energy, heart, and meaning, and that you can't move around to different things to try some things out. Uh, the granddaughter just got her master's, uh, went to spend a semester in New Zealand once. Um, and she and I had this discussion, and she said she was really impressed with New Zealand because people were so happy there. And I said, why do you think that's the case? She said, because they got to do what made them happy, not what they had to do because they needed the insurance or retirement, because they were part of the social infrastructure. And so people got to find their passion, professionals, and make livings, but they didn't have to stay there, because if they left, they might not have their insurance or their retirement fund wasn't. And I think there's wisdom in so much of that. So we're blessed. There's a Jewish phrase, Hebrew phrase. We're Jewish, but um, the word is dayenu, dayenu. There's a song called Dayenu, but it means this would have been enough. So if God just enabled the Jews to leave Egypt, that would have been enough. And then if they just got through the 40 years in the desert, that would have been on and on. Well, that's what I think about. Susan and I, we joke about it sometimes. If this is all our life had been, if this is all there was, this would have been enough. And we do that with a sense of meaning and glory. And when I say glory, just radical amazement of what life has been like. The tragedies are more, I think, when lives are cut very, very short. And, in the United States, we just had Memorial Day, and there was somebody in our neighborhood who had been killed as a young man with young children in the Afghanistan war. And that's tragedy. To me, we all get sick. Something will take us eventually, but we've been fortunate enough to live full and meaningful lives. Finding that spot is always often a challenge for people. I want to know that. It's not a brag, but we're fortunate enough to have been able to find that place.
Hmm. Sam, what have you been doing to engage your mind? And you've talked about you have Dementia Man, and then you have the literary work. So, what other things are you doing to keep your mind fresh and engaged?
Not a whole lot of other things. I mean, we try to stay involved in the community. We're now having to, we're moving into a senior living. That involves, by the way, if somebody gave us a word, I talked to somebody about it. I said, it's an emotional journey. It's not just work. So we're going through a lifetime of things. I never threw away a book. By the way, I had thousands. We have things from back my dater days from museums may want it. And we go through it, and we have 2 houses with stuff. So that keeps, I mean, when that's over, will there be other things? Well, hopefully one of the reasons we're going to uh, a senior living community is that there will be things there to do, people to meet new, um, and be involved in them. Um, we're going out less to plays. We used to go, God, I'm trying to avoid being political, to the Kennedy Center here. We'd been subscribers and gone to theater there. It's not as much now. Well, we stopped because of the political considerations, but we can we've enjoyed theater, and um, and exercising every morning are ways to keep busy. And I think we'll keep doing that. I'm have a group of men that we've been involved with over the years who have been friends. We're going to start trying to have a monthly lunch together and be able to enjoy each other and keep engaged. And, Zoom does a lot. We're getting to know that Zoom keeps us a bit more locked up than maybe we should be, more at home. So we need to work it hard, being among people. So going to our synagogue for programs and other places that in the community that have programs, family events with people. So doing that, I think but again, the senior living community that we're going to go to, will have those, and they'll be in right there in the nearby. And we live again in a home that's a bit isolated. We'll live we'll live in walking distance of stores and shops and things that we can just get out and go to. So I think that will help us get out of the house and be
Yeah.
around.
It makes sense because in community with that social engagement does so much for mental cognition and, cognitive processing. And just, we saw with COVID, right, where people were kind of stepping away and you saw a lot of cognition decline, even without folks with Alzheimer's. For a lot of people, it was just having that big negative impact.
Yeah, and it's funny that as young guy, before we could afford a home, we lived in apartment houses. Now they didn't have organized programs usually, but they certainly you can see your next door neighbor and know people more. Where uh, so yeah, I think moving. In fact, again, it's a bit of a new thought, a stronger thought of to get moving in, maybe even somewhat earlier than we've chosen to into senior living would have given us more community. And not that we've been active in our community. We have a son, and he's had fundraisers, and he would have events and get invited. But now it's getting harder, and the senior living is really, I think, in fact, that is our biggest and boldest move and change to make sure we're in a community and have resources and can walk and be involved with people and not sitting in um, an apartment, or sitting in a room in a same place with just watching TV.
That makes
And of
sense.
course, we're big dog people. Can't get we take our dogs for walks. Our dog. So I shout out to our dog Sparky,
What kind of dog?
Chihuahua.
Chihuahua. Oh yeah, there you go.
First first Chihuahua we ever had. We think Sparky is our best dog ever.
Little and spunky, right?
Yes, Sparky is the solution to Alzheimer's.
So how did the Dementia Man, the play, come about?
Well, so I had written this other play. I was still performing it when I was diagnosed, but having trouble performing it. So this was called The Actual Dance. Um, and so I had had the experience of writing about the stories of emotional, I call them both existential. They're about life and death. And, the first play was, I still think the hardest thing in the world isn't me dying. It's the impact on my wife. It's, I learned so much from having to almost get ready to hold my wife as she took her last breath. I couldn't imagine having to do it. It created the imagery in my mind that I was able to put into play. Nobody in my family's been, I don't know how I came to be able to do it. But it was such a meaningful, good people I met, and lucky that I knew these theater world people who helped me. And because I want to give credit to all of them. And today happens to be Carol Fox Prescott's birthday. And Carol Fox Prescott is one of the people who taught me how to get on stage and follow. She calls it follow your breath. So I got trained in that, and it enables us to embrace life and avoid that tragedy narrative. And I never knew that I could do it, but I was brought to it and given uh, the opportunity to do it and being in groups of people and positive feedback for me. The fact that people liked it and I got good feedback energizes. It can probably be, yeah, I'm reminded, you know, so yeah, of when I started my first company, when I started my company. And I had worked for Ralph Nader. I've worked in places, but I'd never been a boss. And I would nominate myself being the worst boss in the history of the world for a period of time. But theater itself and yes, anding. So I did, I think I mentioned, I did improvisational theater is built on the concept of, It's called yes and, taking in all information and adding information. It's the essence of improvisational theater. You don't walk into it with pre-thought information. You have a stage or you get on stage and then they'd ask the audience, who are they? Where are they? And then they turn it over to make a play out of that. Well, there's a woman, Tipa Snow, in the United States. She works in senior living and uses improv, yes, anding on that. So if somebody doesn't know the real world, how do you engage with them? So she uses an example. A woman she has a video on this. Woman is in a memory care, and the woman used to be a maid. She's walking into this room, whacking that seat of chairs with a brush. And Tipa Snow tells the audience, she used to be a maid. She's clean. She thinks she's cleaning up. So rather than stop that, you're damaging the furniture. It's, oh, what a good job you're doing. You're going to finish your last chair. And the woman hits that one chair and stops. And she compliments her and said, let's go have lunch. Rather than saying, so my trick on that is, or way to use it, is that somebody say, well, ask me to go to the movie. I'll say, sure, let's go to the movie. And on the way, let's just stop at the bagel store, just briefly. And so, yes, and stop at the bagel store on the way. So that's not enough. But when we get to the bagel store, oh my God, there's Henry. We haven't seen Henry for years. And the story changes and life changes. So if somebody doesn't think they're at home because they have dementia, do you try to persuade them they're at home? You can get in a big fight about it, but you're not going to, or say, all right, yes, it is time to go home. Depending on the circumstances, get your clothes on, let's get ready, walk out the front door. And I've heard enough people describe, sometimes they just walk out the front door and walk back in, and the person's home again. Sometimes they have to get in the car and drive around the block or walk around the block. The person with the dementia, the disease, has gone home. So yes, anding and theater work, and learning how to do that. I'm very lucky to have had this because I can almost yes and myself. Live, not get. The biggest temptation in so many of this is the tragedy narrative, and why me, and it's so hard, and how are we going to survive, and not. We can still find joy in our lives. And, I think there's short enough time, and, soon to be 81, 4 to 5 years, I hope, longer, but maybe. We're going to a new place. Serendipity. How do you tag into serendipity? Turns out the person who's in charge of this new place we're going to be going into had worked with my wife 15 years ago in the senior living world. So we're their favorite. And they've presented the show and we know people. And you can't predict that. You don't look for it. It's not a brag. It's just so, and who knows what else might happen. And looking for the good and enjoying it. And I don't want to blame anybody for how their lives are. Just trying to live the best life you can and finding the joy, even when it gets hard, is a journey. Let me put it that way. And working hard at it. Again, don't, like everything else in life, it's not going to necessarily come easy. And it can be true that we can live a meaningful, joyful life, even in our last stages, last ages. So that's what we're trying to do.
What can the audience expect if they haven't seen the show, if they're coming in blind? What's the kind of format? What's the material like? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, by the way, DementiaMan.com, but, No, so it is theatrical. It is what would be like a full 1 hour, one person show. We don't have a um, intermission. And there is plan, stage. It's not random. It's not a speech. Um, it's I am able to be multi-character in that, um, when I go into a doctor's office and rather than say, and the doctor told me, I said, uh, um, uh, d- d- we asked, let me give an example. So there's a scene in the play. We imagine we go to Switzerland. We tell the audience everything in the play is true and real, except for one scene that involves a trip someplace. Sam and Susan didn't go to Switzerland. But we imagine it because it's the contra of the show. It's what we don't do. This whole show and it has different. It's autobiographical. Who is this guy? It is a story about how do you live a good life with a disease, and it is a voice against or contra to assisted or accompanied suicide, and it is an invitation for everybody to be part of the lives of anyone with dementia to live a meaningful and good life together with them, and urging those of us with it to add to the science, be in drug trials, be there. So that's the arguments within the show. But I'll sit down and there's a scene, um, you know, and Susan and I agreed, had agreed to, uh, talk, Susan and I getting on our plane and head to Switzerland. We talked about it for hours and hours and hours. We even saw this is that, but we even saw, um, uh, kind of blank on the word, a counselor, and talked to her for hours and hours and hours. We bought 2 airline tickets. Only one was round trip. And we even paid the outrageous fee for this debt facilitation place. And now Susan tells me I don't have to do this. And then I become Susan. Sam, I love you. Okay, I'm blanking on the word, but I have my script with me when I do this. Um, I love you. You'll never be someone different. You'll always be Sam to me, or you never be a lesser person to me. Let's just go home and make the best of it. So I use her voice. I try to use her voice, and the stage has different locations, different doctor office, and it's a simple set. It's just 2 chairs and a small desk and this pink cup. The pink cup is the poison. Um, Which, again, we never did and we never do, but we were tempted. I was tempted. I had that nanosecond, and I'm still pissed off that I would even think of it for that short of time. Because I think every person, particularly parents and grandparents, can be models for how to take the most important period in your life. Now, there is one fatal flaw in that issue. It's an American one, and that is, do I want my disease to bankrupt my family? And I don't have an answer to that. This is being brutally honest. That there are, I've seen and read from some people, including someone I happen to have known. Have, I read the obituaries every day, right? And there was this guy's obituary somebody had worked with. And I looked at my phone. I even had his um, contact information phone. And he had retired at Santa Fe, and his obituary said he went to Switzerland to do a committed suicide. He had Alzheimer's. And they quoted him as saying, I don't want to be an undue burden to my family. That's a social failure. That's a social failure. And I wish I had an answer to that. But even without that, we can find ways and in community to do it the best we can. And, um, you know, that's what I want to be a model for.
Well, Sam, are you ready for lightning round?
I'm ready for a lightning round.
All right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee,
Decaf or calf?
calf, some more calf,
Oh,
more calf.
Sam, one of these days, we're like, I don't know, 45, 50 episodes in, and I haven't had one person that's decaf yet other than me. I'm just hoping one day I'll hit somebody. One day, Sam, I will find that person.
You'll never find decaf, never coffee people. Okay.
Oh, I'm starting to feel that way. I'm starting to feel that way. Morning bird or night owl?
But divided. I'm becoming a morning bird. I was pretty good along. I'd like to think every time of day, but um, I'm becoming a morning bird.
What's one small thing that reliably makes you smile?
Sparky, our dog. Sparky, our dog. Me and Sparky, we got this thing going.
What's one word people use about dementia you'd happily retire?
Dementia, the word itself. No, it urgent, urgent. Reminded of somebody else who was talked about some things, and a late rabbi friend of mine, and I will say this is like being in a car, and in the United States when they're testing the emergency system, you get the beep beep beep. This is not an emergency. This is just a test. Well, this is not a test. I want the world to hear beep beep. This is not a test. Retire the word dementia. You got to get rid of the word dementia.
What's something people are surprised you still enjoy?
Ooh, lightning round, but I still enjoy. Ooh, I think the exercise. They're still surprised I still like going every morning and doing my exercise. I think that would be.
What does a good day feel like to you?
Ooh, writing a poem, writing a paragraph. That would make the day worthwhile.
What's one assumption about dementia that you disagree with most?
That those with it are not human beings.
If they were to make a movie about your life, Sam, who would play you? And it can be any actor from any time frame.
Okay, there is a guy, and I can't remember his name. He was a young, handsome, and everybody said you look just like him. He was a young, handsome guy, and I used to write about it, joke about it. I can't remember. See, this is unfair. You can't ask for a man with dementia to come up with names like that. But it was him, and there was this guy, and I want to say it even had an S in the name.
As soon as we get off, Sam, you will remember.
Yeah, but there was this young, handsome actor and lots of things, and everybody said he looked just like him. And oh well.
If you remember, Sam, later on, let me know. We'll throw it in here after the fact. What food reminds you of your childhood?
Tongue. Cow's tongue. Have you not had cow's tongue?
I have. My wife is Nicaraguan, and it is a delicacy down there.
Well,
I'm not a fan.
Growing up, cow's tongue was cheap. It was the extra piece of meat. And we would have it in our house because this is why I still think our family was lower income. She could have, it would feed everybody in the house. 4 kids, 2 adults, and 1 tongue, 1 big piece of tongue. Still love it.
What helps you relax after a hard day?
Can I say Sparky again?
Sure.
I think Sparky. Well, no, I think literally we do TV. A good Netflix thing can get us to let go and forget anything that's gone on. I also want to credit my incredible wife, Susan, my cognitive navigator. She, I mean, she's literally does lessons and works with others to find and having somebody who accepts you. And, it's easy for people, you know, so I'm so lucky to have somebody who is so can help me let go too, um, and pull me aside out of that place, whatever that would be.
What show are you watching on Netflix right now?
You want me to think of the names? And we actually saw the most recent movie for Ryan. What's it called? Um, we just did that last night. There was a movie, but then we watch. Then the not we're into we like Liz Elsbeth on regular TV. Here it's a series. Elsbeth, a woman who is it's a mystery, not a mystery, a detective, and
Oh, okay.
things like that. So watching mindless TV helps.
Okay. Okay. What's the most human thing that's happened to you lately?
The most human thing that happened to me lately. Um, well, first of all, just my granddaughter hugging me after her getting her master's is hugely that way. But we did, we found out there's we're downsizing. We got boxes to be shredded, and somebody posted that there was a shredding event this Saturday, and so I can't make it. And so we said, "Can we come by and pick it up for you?" Um, there you go. Uh, that was great. Um, our grandchildren are, love them too. I don't know. They're very human, you know. But but in that the order of things, just offering to come and take it. Well, I would have lunch today. I think I mentioned I thought I couldn't be able to drive to it. The guy said I'll come pick you up if you need it. That was another very human thing. So we I don't run into very many nasty people.
What's one thing you'll never stop being curious about?
What's next? I I'm not convinced that there isn't a next. I'm I wrote a poem. It's very quick. It's called Us. Life exists in each of us as a form of the divine, a tangible essence of who we are. I love you simply awakens the us in you and me, each making us each an equal half of the other. End of poem. I did but come to believe that it is possible that what love really means is that a single soul, that two people's souls do unite into a singularity, that the biggest gift in life is love, a love that I don't want to call it deep, that we are a single soul, shared soul. That's why loss can be so hard. Like you can lose the other half of who you've become. And that idea is in the actual dance when I was facing having to lose Susan. And I think that I do want to find that out though. Will we ever know? I don't know. I I become a soup person. What's a super? I think that life is and I've had an experience with my mother. I was at her deathbed as she passed, and I did experience not a I had a visual experience of something leaving her. So profound that it took me a decade before I could even tell somebody, and then it was a psychiatrist. And so I'm convinced it was real. I'm convinced that we each have this within us, this piece of whatever that other life creating force is. And we have it as a gift, but we intermix that. We become a singularity. So I'm curious to see if it's true. And that next thing, it's possible we won't be conscious of it, but it also makes me not afraid.
What gives you hope, Sam?
That such a place exists.
Well,
And my children, I want to say, we are so blessed again. And to every child of a living parent, to know that you hold their, it's you can give them. That is a gift you can give. I am so, I don't know this. I'll say it anyway. Give you a chance to edit it out if you want to. But I've run into so many broken families and broken situations, and I don't know if it's something to you personally. I don't know you that well, but I'm just so sorry for that, and that the opposite is possible. That this ultimate love, this thing that you can become a single part of someone so deeply and kind, and that to me is what life is ultimately about: is being able to find that level of intimate interconnection with another human being. Gives me hope that that level of among human beings is possible at all, that it will be more of that as the world gets older.
that's profound. That's profound, Sam. Well, Sam, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for imparting your wisdom, and thank you for all the advocacy work that you're doing. I appreciate that there are people like you in this world doing such amazing things. So
I'm
thank you for everything.
and thank you for having the people like you in this world and having this kind of stuff and let us do it.
And to our listeners, thank you as well for being here. If today's conversation resonated with you, make sure to follow the Dementia Collective wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to share this episode with someone who you think might benefit. And don't forget, a like, comment, and subscribe will help us share this message even further. And if you'd like to help us grow this movement, please consider becoming a member of the Village on Patreon. Among the benefits, like the ability to ask questions to our guests, you'll get early access to every episode, plus the satisfaction of helping powerful voices like Sam's reach more caregivers around the world. And finally, if you're on your own caregiving journey, remember, you are not alone. We're here at BlueBell to help connect you with the supports and resources that truly fit your family's unique needs. Until next time, remember, you are strong, you are not alone, and you're doing something that matters more than you know. I'll see you next time.